Hello, 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 everyone. Thanks again for joining us. We're a little flustered here because we've been having some technical difficulties for Riverside. Riverside's really not recovering well from this AWS server thing that happened last week. We're still coming out of the weeds of it. But thanks, Toby, for hanging in there and
Yeah, it's been an adventurous last what
hour.
almost exactly hour. Yeah, that we've been fiddling with a bunch of different ways that we could talk about this movie today.
Yeah. So thank you for joining us for another edition of Gonna See My Friends, the podcast where we visit all the classics, the cult hits, the what were we thinking, right here on
Yep.
the all a part of the Stegar Network. That's what I like to call it, the Stegar Network.
Yes, absolutely.
We have another podcast over on the network, whatever this is called. It's more pop culture, in the moment pop culture, books, music, any kind of thing, comics. You should go check that out. That would be really sweet.
It's a good
And if
pod. It's a good
yeah,
pod.
and if you like what you hear and you like what you're seeing and you like the way we talk about things, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, man. It really helps out the channel. But all that said, we got a good one this week, don't we, Toby?
We sure do. And happy Halloween, everybody. If this goes well, and this we can get this thing recorded today, it should, fingers crossed, drop on Halloween. So happy Halloween to everybody out there. And what a better way to celebrate Halloween than with John Carpenter's Halloween.
Yeah.
Okay, right? Huh?
Oh, dude, this is an all-time classic.
It
You know,
sure
this is
is.
kind of set off a lot of the horror movies, for the 80s especially. I think this is kind of tied into all of that stuff. Would you agree with that
I think
assessment?
this is the Godfather, really. This is pre-Jason, pre-Freddy. It's like this is the golden era of the slasher films.
Yeah.
I believe they call it like 75 to 85, I think is what they call it. This kind of halfway through the what is the documentary that we talk about all the time, The
Oh, the
Decade Under the
decade under the
Influence.
influence.
So this starts, this movie comes out in 1978 on a shoestring budget that uh, uh, it's John Carpenter's Halloween, and it really is John Carpenter's Halloween. He wrote it, directed it, he did the score. You can see his cigarette smoke floating around in the background because he was chain smoking the whole time. He's in the movie. It started it all. I think it really did kind of start it all
Yeah.
as far as our generation goes. I mean, there's other slasher movies that happened in the past, but this is the one where, as kids in the 70s, little kids, we were actually straight terrified of the Shape, Michael Myers.
The Shape.
The
Yeah.
Shape, which is such a cool way of describing the heavy in this, the antagonist.
Yeah, this is coming off the heels of like the Omen, I think, and
Yeah, right.
Amityville Horror. Is that Amityville is an 80, right? I can't remember.
So
Anyway,
oh, it's coming off the heels of Texas Chainsaw
yeah,
Massacre,
that's it. That's the one I was.
which
Yes,
is
exactly.
74. So that, I guess you could say, Leatherface and those, the whatever was going on in that house,
Yeah,
is kind of, but worse. You're born in 74. I'm
yeah,
two, so I'm not seeing that movie until much
the
later. But
80s. Yeah,
seeing the face of the mask of Michael Myers is one of my earliest pictures that I have in my mind of what terror can be when it comes to movies.
yeah. I think this kind of sets off the kind of, or kicks off kind of the IPs where things become kind of the property of a studio, and it kicks off like
Mm,
the sequel and the big horror kind of trilogies, or not even
yeah.
trilogies. I mean, they're making them ad nauseum here, but this is kind of the kickoff. I mean, because you come from The Exorcist, The Omen, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, all these kind of movies where it's like kind of a demon or a monster or kind of this existential kind of threat, and yet this one kind of kicks off this kind of evil that is is personified in yeah, in a person,
Yeah.
and it kind of attacks. I think this is kind of framed, the way I think about it is that us Gen Xers, we were kind
Mhm.
of, as kids, we kind of go out, we wake up, school day or a weekend or whatever it is, summers, we wake up and your parents are just like, "Get out of here," and you
Right.
do. You leave and you play and you go take bike rides and you
Mhm.
play with your friends, and then you
Mhm.
come back dinner time, and I think in this generation, people just don't understand, like, how that happened. Is that really true? And yeah, we
Oh
went
yeah,
out
we
and
were
that
feral. We were
right.
feral kids, but you come home when the streetlights came on.
Yeah, and I think this kind of takes that concept of that freeness, but there's
Yeah.
also a dangerous part of that, where I think a lot of times people don't think about, back then we just knew that you don't take candy from strangers, you don't
Yep.
talk to, you can talk and be nice, but you got to be aware,
Don't
right?
get into
And
somebody's
groups,
car.
right? That you
Stranger
don't
danger
know.
was, yeah. That's it. Those were our marching orders.
Yes, and I think this kind of plays on that. It plays on that fear that,
Mm.
okay, there's a little bit of danger to that element of danger to that because, it kind of takes that and says, this is a person, this is something that can actually happen. And it's the worst fear of every parent or every child that it was kind of like that. Do you agree with that assessment?
Oh yeah, I mean, again, we were really trusted to make good decisions out there, and again, gone from 9 o'clock in the morning till 7 o'clock at night. Everyone's you come racing through the house in midday, and your mom would be watching what if it was. I'm thinking summertime or weekends,
Right.
where you and your four friends would the door would slam open, and you and your friends would run through, grab something out of the refrigerator, and run back out before she could be like, "Hey," and
Right.
then gone again.
Yeah.
We didn't
Yeah.
have a sip of water all day. No, we were,
Or we
except for
drank
out
from
of
the
the hose.
hose.
We drank from the hose. Yeah, yeah, that good plasticky piping hot water out of the hose. Yeah, I think they trusted us a lot in that we would go out and make good decisions, and I think that the boomers, our parents, the boomers, really, I appreciate it in hindsight because I think that it helped us. I don't know if it matured us at all because I'm still that 8-year-old, a lot of times,
It
but
socialized us.
yeah.
It definitely had us kind of develop that side of us where we could go and do new things now without our like I remember signing up for baseball and going to my baseball practices without, and games sometimes without my parents.
Yeah.
I was just trusted to just take care of that, and I think um that is kind of the like in our day, that was kind of the thing. That was just, latchkey kids or whatever you want to call us.
Mhm.
But we were kind of in charge of our own destiny in a sense because we just took care of everything. Or we had adults like teachers and like my PE teacher was always like, Garcia, are you going to play for us this summer? Or are you going to play for us this year? And I'm like, yeah. And that's all it took, really. There
Right.
was no signing anything. There were no permission slips. It was just, okay, you're on the team. And and it was just more of the world was kind of catered, and it really kind of we used the term "it takes a village," and it really
Mhm.
did, especially in my town. And I know you grew up in Forceville, which is kind of
Yeah.
similar in the smallness of the town
Yeah.
where the teachers or the maybe your best friend's family, they they didn't take care of you, but they just were like, oh, hey Steve, how you doing, or whatever it
Right.
was. And there was a lot more of that kind of freedom to kind of play around in the town because everybody kind of knew, sometimes when I would mess up, I would get from my grandfather, be like, hey, I heard you were doing this and that, quit doing that, and you're like, Jesus, how did you know that, but
Right.
it just got around. So I think this film, tying it back to this film, which is I
Yes.
think that this is kind of the way that we were, and this introduces an element of every parent's nightmare. And I think that that's kind of the thing of like, you have these kids who are babysitting, or they're just hanging out at school, or they're making plans, and, there's a lot of scenes in this movie that take place that just mirror those things of walking home with your friends
Yeah.
and, bumping into like the sheriff or whoever it
Right.
was. And that's what that's what appealed to me about this movie on the rewatch last night, which was it captures that small town feeling very well because it's
Agreed.
just everybody's kind of tied into everything. And And then you have this element of this doctor kind of hanging out. He hangs out in the town and he's like, "What are you doing?" He's just sitting in his car. And
Yeah.
uh, what did you think about kind of the appeal of this movie, and why do you think it has such a? Why do you think it still appeals to people today?
So let me just put, something that you talked about with it does have the small town feel about it.
Yeah, yeah,
Haddonfield. And again, and it is the kids are kind of their own group, and then you have the babysitters. And again, with the parents were worried
yeah,
that something bad would happen. But like in Stand By Me and some of the older movies, the parents are non-existent in this movie. It's where are the parents in this movie? I mean, you've got the babysitter at one time screaming her head off, "Help me," on a night where kids had just been out trick or treating and nobody can be bothered to even
right.
open the door and look outside. What is going on here? Like, where are the adults in this movie? Like, so, I mean, the adults are the doctor, the
Hmm.
sheriff, and I mean that's kind. Those are the adults in this, and then the
Yeah,
nurse at the beginning. When
yeah,
we flash forward 15 years, I think the appeal of this movie um, is the simplicity of it.
yeah.
I think that there's something that's very, very terrifying about a guy in coveralls with a $2 Halloween mask on Halloween, where nobody's looking. If you even look at over at the guy, you go, "Oh, he's out trick or treating with his
Right,
kids."
right.
You're not going to even think twice. The dogs are like, "Hey, over here!" Right? They're barking at him. Um, Other than that, that's really terrifying. Just everyone just being checked out is the scary part of it, and I think this kind of drew attention to that, where maybe the parents around the late 70s were going, maybe we should keep a better eye on what these kids are doing. I mean, this is pre it's 10 o'clock, do you know where your children are commercials that came on, but it's pretty close. That
Hmm.
comes a couple years later in the early 80s,
Right.
and that of course started with the Atlanta child murders that were going, absolutely
Hmm.
wild at
Yeah.
during this time. That's when those commercials, those PSAs came on. You started seeing that a little bit more around 1980. And I don't know if the people were afraid that Michael Myers was going to come out from behind the bush, but who's to say he's not?
Right.
That's
Well,
all
I
it
think
is a guy in coveralls and a mask. I mean, there you go. And a butcher knife. The end. That's what you got. And he
yeah.
kills everybody he meets.
I think that's what kind of is the appeal for me anyways, is that's the appeal of this movie, or not appeal, but maybe the signaling in this movie of an end of an era, because I
Yeah.
feel like, the 80s, like I was saying before, we kind of created our own day, and we kind of, took
Yes.
charge or whatever as kids. And I think that this kind of introduces that idea of every parent's nightmare, is that the monster isn't so much now this chainsaw wielding person, or
Right.
it's not a demon, or it's not
Right.
this external thing. It's invading the suburbs. It's invading kind of the comfort of what the kids are doing in a neighborhood or something, and I feel like this is kind of the key. This kind of kicks off that feeling.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's the real life stuff that, I never heard of but whatever you were saying about the murders,
Yeah.
there was a lot of that happening at the time that kind of underscores all this, this violence in here. And the kind of cool thing about this movie too is another point, is that there's a lot of buildup in this movie. There's a lot of that doesn't really kick off the gore and all that until the last, what, like half hour, maybe
Yeah. Not
25
a whole,
minutes.
not real super bloody, right?
Right. And there's a lot of buildup. There's a lot of him falling, driving around all day, and
Right.
following Lori, and all this kind of creeping in the meh, meh,
Yeah,
that
he's
kind of
behind
thing.
those some of those iconic shots where he's standing like just kind of partially blocked by the hedges. That's a fun meme that pops up from time to time. Kind of Homer Simpson going back into the back into the shrubs. I mean, it's funny at the time when it popped up. I was like, and then Jamie Curtis is all, "What's going on?" She's like trying to struggle to see.
Right.
He's like two doors down, and she's all, "Is that a what the?" Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I think the just the brazenness of this killer that is, I mean, this was easy for him.
Yeah. Yeah.
He just makes quick work, and he's toying with the teenagers, because again, you have the theme of, well, the teenagers have to have sex at some point, and we have to have boobies because it's a rated R movie, and we, give the people what they want, right?
Well, let me
Just like what
push
they
back
said
on
in
you. Let me push back. I mean, don't you when you spill something on yourself, don't you strip down to your underwear? I mean, that's
Oh,
what everybody
absolutely.
does.
Yes, yes. Everything off down to just the panties, of course. And then the opening scene where we see the point of view, Michael's point of view, the young Michael, 6 or 8 years old, and you see his point of view, and it's all that one or
Yeah.
tracking shot
Yeah.
for I think a good 2 minutes of it, which is so cool. I think that's a really cool way to start this. I mean, the opening title card and the music are obviously very iconic as well. It brings you right in right from the beginning, where you have that
Yeah.
5/4 time signature that
Yeah.
John Carpenter's hitting three notes, and that you know exactly where you are when you hear that theme song, and it's slowly kind of closing in on the pumpkin. There's that theme that happens in this, as far as the filmmaking aspect of
Right.
how he did it, where it starts out very big, and then slowly over the course of scene after scene after scene, we get closer and closer, and then it becomes really kind of claustrophobic by the end of the movie. I
Right.
really, it doesn't hit you over the head with it, but if you watch it a second time, you kind of do feel like, why do I feel like it is a little, claustrophobic? Of course, nobody's turning on any lights in the house, and there's a reason for that, of course, but you just have your anyway. I could go on and on, but I think that the brazenness of this killer, who is just like you said, he's driving around town. He drives past the hardware store where the sheriff and the doctor, driving the doctor's stolen vehicle, by the way, and just drives right by him. It looked 5 o'clock in the afternoon, like it's after school. He's driving around. I mean, does not care at all. This is an uncaring. I've got one. I mean, it's unclear what his motivation is, but yeah, it does hit on, how come in Friday the 13th every movie has to have the camp counselors who they have to get naked at some point. Is it because of Halloween, where every girl takes, besides Jamie Lee Curtis in this movie, takes her top off? What and they're supposed
Mhm.
to be like 15. Like Michael's sister, who was his first kill at the beginning, they're supposed to be 15 years old. I was like, I don't know. Are you just sitting at your vanity, no shirt on? I mean, there's some kind of, it might take you out of it a little bit, but
Well,
it's best not to get too hung up on that kind of stuff,
what
right?
makes this is kind of the question that was running through my head while you were talking was what makes Michael Myers so terrifying, even though he doesn't really speak or runs really. He doesn't
Right,
run after you. Why
right.
is that so terrifying, do you think?
Well, it's again, I'm a big Jason fan, and that's why I think Jason is scary, because he's not going to run after you. He's just, and It Follows. That's why I love we did It Follows last year, and I find that to be really scary, because again, this thing's not going to talk to you. I don't think it ever runs. It's just walking. It's
Right.
slowly coming, and I don't think I've ever been able to put my finger on why that is terrifying. It just kind of is. It's just
Yeah.
I don't like it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's kind of this idea that it's an unstoppable force, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So
that could be.
it doesn't need to run after you. It's gonna know where you go, even if you turn the corner and do all these, which is illustrated at the end when Laurie kind of opens the doors and then goes hides in the closet, which I think is probably the best scene in the movie, or
Yes,
one, and not even in the movie, but I think in all kind of horror movies in general, as her in the closet, and but that's a great scene. And
yes.
um why do you think, see, I'm going to ask you this one. Why do you think that Lori lives and her friends are don't? And I always thought when I was watching the movie, I thought, okay, this is the trope, which is the smart or the kind of nerdy one who is not nerdy, but the one that's always kind of getting picked on a little bit. Because I mean, her friends are kind of, give her these, kind of tease her a lot,
Right.
and that was realistic. I felt like that was kind of realistic because at that age you don't really pick your friends. You just kind of fall into the ones that will let you come in, right? And that comes at that age. I think that comes with a little bit of they're gonna needle you and they're gonna tease you. And to me, that was really relatable. But
Hmm.
yeah, I always thought that that trope of like, well, the horny one's gonna get killed first,
Right.
And PJ Souls, who I love from Stripes, that's where I know her from.
Okay.
And but why do you think that Lori survives and her friends don't? Is that just following a trope, or is that just kind of some other thing? You
I
know?
think it goes back to his main motivation,
Yeah,
which is he looks in the window and he sees his sister, his older sister, and that is his. I mean, that's a core memory for Michael. This is just the way that I see it. And so when he sees promiscuous things going on,
yeah,
and these teenagers are fooling around and they're getting naked, he kills his sister and uh, not just his sister. He kills his sister. The boyfriend leaves,
yeah,
and when he 15 years later, he Lori is the one. I mean, she's not the promiscuous one. In fact, so much the opposite of that is that she was mortified when Annie told the boy that Linda liked, "Oh, you didn't tell him that. I told him you think he's very attractive." She was mortified by this, and then it keeps coming back to it. You call him back and tell him you're just joking.
yeah,
And I don't know if Michael somehow inherently knows this. I mean, he's certainly very strong, very powerful, and very good at hunting his prey. But I think he starts with, I mean, this was going to be called The Babysitter Murders, right? The original
yeah,
title of
yeah.
this.
Right.
And it wasn't fleshed out until Halloween 2 that we find out that Lori is Jason's younger sister. They don't say that until the
Huh.
beginning of Halloween 2. We don't know that. I think that was maybe a hindsight,
Yeah, that
you
was
know.
retconned, I think, in there. Yeah,
Okay. Okay, because it picks up Halloween 2 picks up immediately after where Halloween 1 ends, the first
hmm,
Halloween. And
yeah,
we hear, well, here's one thing you didn't know, Dr. Loomis. It was under seal that when she was, 2 years before. I mean, I watched it immediately after last night because I mean they're all on AMC right now, so you can just,
yeah,
it just goes right into the next one. Halloween 2, nowhere near as good. But they do explain that Michael maybe not in the original movie, but if you're going to take the whole franchise as a whole, that is canon. And so I think they kind of answer that for us. But if you're just going to look at this one film as just a standalone film, I think that he was. I mean, the first person he sees is Lori because he's hiding
hmm,
in his house, right? That her dad's gonna sell, and he sees Lori first, and I think he latches onto her and then follows her around and sees the other two friends who are, I don't know, a lot more promiscuous, and that pisses him off. I think that's what really angers Michael is, I don't know, loose women. I mean, I'm not sure
yeah,
what, I mean, how would he think of it in 1978? The guy's never said
yeah,
a word, so we really don't know. He's just been staring at a wall, through a wall,
yeah.
for the last 15 years in a psych ward, in a sanatorium. Uh, yeah,
Well,
I don't, yeah, go ahead.
I think that has something to do with it. That's what my
Okay.
conclusion was that
Oh,
it
good.
was just kind of the
Did I get it
premise.
right?
Well, yeah, that's what I agree with you. I mean, I don't know if
Okay,
it's right
good.
or
All right.
wrong, but
Okay,
yeah,
right.
that's what I was kind of thinking too. Is this promiscuous kind of women, and I think that that's kind of it ties in to, I think, the patriarchal kind of framework of our society is that women are going to get punished if you like sex.
Wow.
Women will be punished for that. And there's to this
Hmm.
day, you still see that, right? You still
Of
see this
course.
attack of them. But I think that this was kind of this, kind of a reaction to that. And I think it was kind of put into this Michael Myers as a kind of like, I don't want to get too political, but it's like this kind of thing of in society, this is what happens to loose women, and it's just kind of put into a horror movie like that, which I think is, I think it flies over the head of a lot of people. Just think, oh, it's a horror movie, they have to die and this and that. But it's also, I mean, it's just the way it's framed. You know what I mean? But
That's really interesting. So, do you, because John Carpenter wrote this with his girlfriend Deborah Hill at the time. They were, and they wrote it together. She wrote the female
right,
parts, and he wrote the male parts and the doctor parts, and
right.
they came together. Do you think this was a warning, like that's where they stood on, hey, if we, maybe if we can save some young women from teenage pregnancy, and with the idea that, well, I'd hate for Michael Myers to come busting through the door right now. I mean, do you think that had anything to do with it? Because that's a really interesting take on that. I hadn't considered that
Oh,
at all.
yeah, I think as with things of this nature, especially in the late 70s,
Yeah.
I think that that is kind of what I don't know if they did that on purpose. I'm not saying like they sat down and said, "This is what we mean by Michael Myers," but what I
Right.
think is that I think having Deborah Hill like write the women, I mean, it was pretty. It was pretty accurate, I would say, in terms of teenagers talking,
Sure. Yeah. Agree.
smoking pot, and
Right.
normally you would see guys, like smoking pot, driving while they're high or driving while they're smoking. So you see this kind of this underlying. I wouldn't say it's a message, but I would say that it's Deborah Hill kind of she was the front runner. She did a lot of what's his name? Walter Hill kind of stuff too. She produced, I think, 48 Hours as well. So I think she was kind of the forerunner of this kind of feminist, or not forerunner, I should say, but she was in a male dominated field. So I
Of
think
course. Yeah.
that kind of influences kind of her writing and kind of the way that she frames things, maybe unconsciously. Cause again, I don't think that they were kind of saying this is an underlying message of this, but I think that people and especially women of that time, I think it's going to come out in some way. And I just feel like that was kind of a little subconscious thing of like, this is the punishment that we do as women in any field. We always have to we're always under attack for something. And, like I said, I don't want to get too political, but I feel like that's an element of this, especially when I was watching it last night and thinking, like you were saying, like, it's this kind of trigger mechanism of, this person. It's like, I'm gonna end it. I'm gonna end people. This is not acceptable, and this and that and the other thing.
Right, and yeah, and not only that, but I mean, he chooses. It's going to work out one of two ways for for young 8-year-old Michael. Either he's going to, this is going to be the thing that makes him want to kill everybody that's doing this thing that he finds wrong, which is what he chooses to do, or this is going to be his kink. I don't, and or both.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
don't. We don't really think of Michael Myers as um dating history very often, but you know what I mean, like, we don't really see that this is what's getting him off, but
Yeah.
this is it's what some serial killers have done, where, I mean, you look at like BTK is a good example of that, where definitely a psychosexual psychopath, uncaring, unfeeling, and this is the only way that gets him off is to go through a certain process, and that's the fantasy world that the serial killers have. I don't think with Michael Myers it's that deep. I just think, you know we don't know why he decided, just coming home from trick-or-treating, he looks in the window, his sister's on the couch, she takes her shirt off, and he's like, okay, and he goes in, grabs a knife. I mean, that's all we get. We have to
Yeah.
kind of, yeah.
Yeah. So I think that it's just up to the watchers, or people watch this. Is just, to a lot of people. And again, for me, I'm just kind of, thinking out loud in terms of what I was, watching this last night. It was just a bunch of things that came to mind as I was watching this, because this is the late 70s,
Mm,
and there is an element of The Exorcist in this, in terms of the slow build, which was, I think it was just kind of new at the time of kind of creating this world where it makes those things creepy. And I think John Carpenter was heavily influenced by the Exorcist because of the slow build of this movie and kind of the payoff, which is really intense. It's the same kind of setup as an Exorcist. I mean, the first hour and a half of that movie is really kind of slow build up,
Right.
you know, a couple creepy scenes here and there. And then the last, what, half hour of that movie, 25 minutes of that movie, it's just 0 to 1,000, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of the same setup in this movie, and I think it does well. I think that's why it has has legs, you know, that's why it's
Yeah.
still, viable today, and so, yeah. But
Well,
I
that
wanted to hit on
and
oh, go ahead, go
they've
ahead.
been beating us over the head with every. It's been rebooted 2 or 3 times, and I don't know if there's. This is in my opinion, the best one of the whole. I mean, you can't capture the magic like you do in the very first one. Not to
Yeah,
mention that $300,000 budget, and half of that was on he wanted good cameras, so 150 of that was just on the cameras themselves. The
yeah,
actors were paid next to nothing. Carpenter, I think, made like $10,000 to write, direct, edit, write the score. I mean, insane. You know,
yeah, I mean,
it,
Loomis
Jamie Lee
Dr.
Curtis,
Loomis got paid 20 grand for 5 days, you know,
five
and it's
days.
like,
That's it.
yeah, and Lori got, or what's her name?
Jamie Lee
Jamie Lee
Curtis.
Curtis got 8 grand for the whole thing.
Yeah,
So,
and
yeah,
had to
it
buy
was
her
bare
own
bones.
clothes.
Yeah.
She had to
Yeah,
buy her
yeah.
own clothes at J.C. Penney's, and that's why it was supposed to be. The reason why they're all wearing the same clothes through the whole movie is because it was supposed to take place over several days, and instead they put it all into one day because then you don't have as many costume changes. I mean, little
Right.
things like that where
Yeah.
you're like, okay, that makes sense. I mean, it was always going to take place. The climax of the movie was always going to take place on Halloween. But I think what he wanted to do was, instead of just starting it out, because it starts, the flash forward takes place on the night of October 30th, where we see Michael's broken out, and the Dr. Loomis and his nurse, they both
Yeah.
escape, and
Yeah.
Jason and Michael takes the car, and then off he drives 150 miles to Haddonfield. The rest of it is all takes place on one day, and it's
Yeah.
to help keep the budget down. Really,
Right.
really
Right.
quite clever. And how are we going to get around this? How are we going to get around the fact that we have no money to do this movie, but we're doing it?
Yeah.
It took
Well,
20
I
days
think
to shoot.
yeah, that's a good segue into the kind of what I wanted to talk about next, which was the cinematography of Dean Cundey, sorry, Cundley.
Oh boy, watch it.
His collaboration with Carpenter, I think this was his first,
Okay.
and he stays with him through The Fog, Escape from New York, The Thing that we did last
Nice.
year, and
Yep.
Big Trouble in Little China. And then he goes on with Spielberg. He does Back to the Future. He does Jurassic Park. He does a lot of Spielberg movies. And so, and then he does Zemeckis. He does Romancing the Stone, and
We've done that.
yeah. And so he starts his career. I think this is kind of the start because I think he did a lot of B movies before this. I was looking through his IMDb, and it was just a bunch of like kind of low budget horror movies. And this one, I think, as you said, he wanted to use good cameras, and he
Hmm.
developed a technique in this movie that has kind of was set the standard in terms of night shooting and how night is portrayed in this movie, which is using blue gels to get this to get kind of this blue hue in the nighttime scenes. And I thought that kind of shot where Lori is like walking and Michael comes out of the shadows behind her,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
that's kind of that's just set the standard for horror movies after this. What do you think, can you tell like his style is stamped on like kind of the movies that he makes? And what do you think of Dean, or do you know of anything about this Dean Cundey?
Well, you listed off a veritable who's who. I mean, half of those movies we've covered on the podcast.
Yeah,
It seems like,
yeah,
and talk about working with some of the heavy hitters in Hollywood. Holy cow! I mean, these are people who know what they're doing, and they're relying
yeah,
on him.
yeah,
And I mean, you just looking at it's beautifully shot. The handheld point of view shots, which we get quite a bit of Michael's point of view, and I think that they did that in the Friday the 13th movies. We got a lot of Jason point of view shots that I don't know that we would have. You usually don't get the point of view of now I am the killer.
you're right.
I mean,
Yeah,
it really you don't that you are the killer. This is the killer's point of view, but I don't know that we take. ownage of that so much, but there is something very creepy about that. It's just a really a great tool to do that, especially with all the night shots, because in the day, it's a beautiful day out
Yeah.
and it's shot in the spring, but it's the set decorators
Tommy Lee
really made
Wallace,
it
dude,
look
who did it in 89 or 90, So,
okay.
yeah.
Yep, yep. I mean, again, with they shot it in the spring in and around Los Angeles, Pasadena,
Yeah.
and it looks like it's Halloween time. I was
Yeah.
bought. I didn't realize that they came out on October 27th, 1978, but they shot it in like April, like
Yeah.
May or
Yeah.
April. And it's supposed to be in Ohio, but there's a couple of shots where you can see palm trees in the background in the
Yeah.
neighborhood. Like by the hardware store, there's a whole row of palm trees.
Yeah.
Not a lot of palm trees in Ohio, but it's little things. The driving scenes are shot really well, and this is you had to have somebody who knew what the hell they were doing behind the camera when there is no budget to reshoot this. We got to
Yeah.
get it on the first
Yeah.
one. So well done to Cundey. Is it
Yeah.
Cundey?
Yeah, Cundey.
Cundey.
Yeah, I think
Is he in the Hall of Fame? He's an Oscar
oh,
winner?
he
I
will
mean,
be.
obviously
Yeah.
an
Yeah.
Oscar winner.
Oh, no,
Is he still
he's
working?
he's
Can
still
we get him
working.
on the pod?
Yeah, I put a call in already. I'm
Good.
ahead of you. Yeah, he
Good.
should be. But I think
Tell him we're on a shoestring
again,
budget now.
I think that this kind of ties in. This is another Exorcist influence, which is he uses a lot of natural lighting, and it's a lot of, I think it causes this to kind of, especially because it's shot in the suburbs, right,
Right.
and schools, and it makes it that naturalistic kind of lighting kind of strips away any kind of, because horror movies tend to have this reputation to be gothic and dark, and there's certainly plenty of that in this movie.
Hmm.
But I think that that's why this movie works so well again with The Exorcist, is that it's not necessarily documentary style, but it's filmed the way it's shot. The look of it is definitely everyday. I think he wanted to portray the suburbs as, again, going back to my original point, was this was the suburbs. This is where all the kids come out and play, and they're riding their bikes and everything. So he wanted this evil to invade that. And so I think the way that this was filmed and shot was really deliberate, because it kind of sets up this neighborhood as kind of just an everyday suburban neighborhood, and I think
Right.
he really got that, and it's really cool. The
It
night
looks like
scenes weren't pitch. Yeah, go ahead.
it looks like Ferris Bueller's Neighborhood.
Right, right.
It looks like the Myers house is really well shot in that it's supposed to look like every street, every neighborhood has that one house that the kids kind of get
Yeah.
creeped out by, and
Right, yeah.
you're not sure if anybody lives there anymore or not, and not a lot of movement in there, and that really captured that very well because we had one of those on my street. I'm sure you
Yeah.
probably had one of those
Yeah.
on your street,
Yeah.
and
I
it
think
is
our
every
house was actually the one.
no, that's not good.
Yeah, I know.
The night shots, we were texting last night. We're just like, one of the things that I'm kind of taken out by it, or that takes me out of it a little bit, is the people who refuse to turn the light switch on in the room before they come into the kitchen, or they're looking around the house. I mean, there's a simple explanation for it. They didn't have money for lights. That's it.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
like, okay, well, that makes sense. They literally could not light it because there was
Yeah.
no money. So,
Yeah.
yeah, other than if you get past that, you're like, oh, okay. Who goes into the kitchen, gets a beer? And what I was hoping, like, what's his name? Paul, or no, whatever the other guy's name is with the glasses. He opens the refrigerator door and you're expecting Michael to be right there. And he's not. And
Yeah.
you're like, oh, here it
Yeah.
comes. And then he closes the door and you're like, he's going to attack now. And then that kind of suspenseful build up where he does end up, and he bites big time. He gets stuck like into the wall
Yeah,
in
with
that
just a
scene.
simple knife.
Yeah, with a butcher knife. Right.
It's gonna hold them.
Yeah.
But
Well,
that's
Jason
the
did that
beauty of
stuff.
this. Yeah.
Jason did that. That shit's scary, man.
Yeah.
I mean, we can get into, how does he have these supernatural strength, and he's taking 6 bullets and then getting up and walking away. And there's a little bit of okay, now I think, and maybe we're getting too far ahead, but I was thinking maybe at the end when, like, how is he living through this? How did he
Right.
just live through all this? And I think the idea of that was that if we can't just leave him now you're like, okay, so he's not just your ordinary slasher. Anybody else would be dead. So now it's like fantastical, and you can leave the movie theater going, it can't happen, guys. That guy can't actually be out there, because you
Right.
realize that
Right.
he's not picking people up with one hand, jamming a knife into their belly, and then the guy's pinned to the wall. I mean, it's over the top. It's over the top on purpose, and that
Right.
this might be too scary for people. And just understand, okay, that was entertainment. I hope you liked it. Happy Halloween.
Yeah.
Anyway, I may have
Yeah.
gotten a little ahead of myself on that, but
No, no, no. You're fine.
okay,
As always, kind of Carpenter's known to score his own movies, and this is a great example of why he does it, because I think the story goes he showed this to an executive without the score, and the
right,
executive was like, "This is not scary. What's going on here?" And I
right.
think,
And he's all, how
like you
about
said,
now?
5 days. Yeah. Then he said 5 days later, he shows it, he scores it, he shows it to the same executive, and she was like, "This is amazing." And
Right.
it kind of goes to show you kind of how Carpenter understands his own films and how he understands how music can impact. Do you think that this stands up as one of the greatest kind of horror themes?
We did
Yeah.
The Exorcist a couple weeks ago, and I couldn't remember what it was. I couldn't remember, but as soon as it started playing, and we don't hear the score until the in the Exorcist, you don't hear the score until they wrap filming for the day, and the mom is walking. I'm just gonna walk home, and then she walks
Hmm.
down the neighborhood, and then the score comes up, and as soon as you hear it, you're like, dude, iconic. It's,
Yeah.
I mean, it's very creepy. This starts out the whole movie where you get it right from the beginning. And of course, man, 5/4 time is weird. It's a weird sensation. You know, not a lot of people would write in that. And again, it's very, very simple and maybe one of the most effective. It's been covered, it's been sampled in numerous like gangster rap songs.
Yeah.
And oh, yeah, oh, 100%. You know it right off the bat, and like you kind of have to have that. You have to have that iconic score with Friday the 13th. It's not the score, it's the
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
have to
Yeah.
have something like that. With the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, you have the do 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 do, that
Right.
kind of haunting.
Yeah.
This is maybe the best one of all of them, because it's this
Yeah.
heart racing. It's a much faster. You're like, you feel like your heart's picking up a beat,
Yeah.
a couple
Yeah.
extra
Yeah.
beats. Yeah,
Yeah.
incredible, incredible score.
Well, this this got a lot of good reviews. It got a couple negative reviews. I think Roger
Hmm.
Ebert says it's a visceral experience. We aren't seeing the movie, we are having it happen to us. It's frightening.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't like movies that are really scary, then don't see this one. Um, his buddy Siskel was called it a beautifully made thriller, and he praised how Carpenter delays the shock and builds anticipation. Again, with that slow build, I think that The Exorcist was a real kind of influence on this movie. Pauline Kael, who is kind of known for just being kind of hot and cold, this
Hmm.
film, she didn't like it. She was like, "This film is largely just a matter of the camera tracking subjectively from the mad killer's point of view.
Hmm.
Halloween keeps you nervous and jumpy rather than pleasurably excited," which I think is a good thing. I think that's
Yeah.
you want that nervousness because it keeps you, that kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she also says maybe when a horror film is stripped of everything but nightmarish, dumb scariness, it satisfies part of the audience in more basic, childish way than sophisticated horror pictures are supposed to do. Which I think is a knock on kind of the audience there. But look, I think
Yeah. You're.
this movie kind of kicks off this whole wave of
Yeah.
horror stuff, and I think
Yes.
you need all that. You need that anticipation, that build up. And then I think, like you were saying, Friday the 13th kind of kind of copies this, I feel like, in terms of
100%.
yeah. And for me, I came into horror through Friday the 13th. last night I was now I'm on the fence. I'm like, this is kind of the kickoff. This is where this
Yeah.
kind of faceless horror comes from, and I kind of like this iteration of it better than Friday the 13th because I feel like
Yeah.
now I see the original and I think, oh, this is kind of where it started, and I have an appreciation for that. I have an appreciation for being kind of the first to kick off stuff, which I still love Friday the 13th movies. But I think, the craziness of what ruined it for me is the craziness of the sequels.
You
So
mean like how are we going to bring him back to how are we going to reanimate this guy's corpse again?
yeah, right.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's ridiculous. Somebody I was listening, I think it might have been the Sklar brothers that were talking about it on a podcast where they were like, okay, no, it was how did this get made? There was a rerun from a few years ago, and they're like, okay, here's how he comes back. In number four, he comes
Yeah.
back this way. In number five, it's actually not him; it's the ambulance driver. And number
Right.
six, like psychic energy brings him back. And number seven, somebody goes to his grave, digs him up, sticks a rod, and that's when lightning hits. And of course, lightning's going to bring everything back to life. So obviously, that was dumb. And then number seven, he gets hooked onto
Yeah.
a ship and he ends up in New York. And then, I mean, ridiculous. But for
Right.
my 16-year-old ass, I was obsessed with it, dude. I could not wait. You're telling me there's more of these movies? I love this guy. He's big,
Mm.
he's burly, he's bald. He's got a little hockey mask that no hockey players worn since the 50s on. And by the way, can I just say this? How dare you with the faceless terror? That's William Shatner, baby. That's William Shatner. Michael Myers is wearing a James T. Kirk mask that's painted white.
I thought it was turned
Uh,
inside out. That's what I heard. And
they
then they
painted
painted
it
it
white
white.
and they cut the eye holes out bigger and they changed the hair. But once you see it, you're like, son of a bitch, that is William Shatner. Ridiculous, right? They bought it for like $1.50. I mean, talk
Yeah.
about having no props whatsoever. But we see Michael's face in this one. I think this might be
Yeah.
one of the only ones where we see Michael's face, where
For a
Jamie Lee
second.
Curtis
Yeah.
gets his. For you, and so to answer your question, why does Lori live? Well, Dr. Loomis shows up.
Right. Right.
She was dead meat, man. She had nowhere else to run. Now she had also hurt him. She'd hurt him by sticking a crochet needle in his neck, and then he falls down. And then he's busting through that iconic scene where she's trapped in the closet and
Yeah.
she hits him with something and he passes out. And then she gets away and she'll go tell the police, go down to McAllister's house and tell the police. And then you're so frustrated because she's still looking out the window. It's a close up on her, and you see Michael get like he sits up and you're just all, oh dude, look behind you, he's right behind you, I mean, that's I think where that kind of thing started, where
Yeah.
this is a machine, this is now a machine. um yeah, and that's terrifying as
Yeah.
it is, but it also is like, make sure you check, don't just turn your back and go, what, I just hit him over the head, what's the problem, everything's fine.
Yeah. I think there's a scene in this movie called The Monster Squad, which we should do, but I love it's a kids movie. But in the movie, he's like, at the beginning, the little son is like, "Dad, could I have money to go see the movie? This movie, I forget, it's part 14." And he's like, "Sean, if they can shoot him, set him on fire, cut him up into a million pieces, and send him to Egypt, he would still come back." And the kid goes, "That was part 7." So I mean, there's this whole kind of thing of
Yes.
understanding in the culture, anyways, understanding the million ways you can kill something and it's going to come back in
Yeah, you
horror
can't
movies.
stop it.
Right. So let's
What about this? I've been dying to ask you this.
sure.
This on Halloween night, and this is when I first saw it, it was always played on, we talked about last week with that David had mentioned, was it AMC Live or something like that? Or TBS, I forget what channel it was, but
AMC.
AMC, it was AMC. AMC would play a movie on repeat, and they would do, The Exorcist. Well, Halloween
Yeah.
on HBO
Yeah.
used to play all the way through, however many there were at the time. Of course, now there's a lot. That's when I first saw it, and I'm going to say that's probably, you know, high school at somebody's house, because we didn't have cable, but one of the guys a couple doors down did. So that's when I would see it. But the characters, the people in the movie are also watching a movie. They're watching The Thing from
The
Another
Thing.
Planet,
Yeah.
which everybody knows as The Thing from 1951.
53, I
Now,
think. Yeah.
okay,
I
I
don't
wrote
know.
it
I'm
down
just
here. I,
guessing.
I wrote it
Yeah.
down, but I was like, oh, they're watching The Thing. Now,
Yeah.
4 years later, he remakes that movie as The Thing,
Yeah.
which we've
Yeah.
covered, which is absolute classic. Do
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
think that was always part of the plan? Or do you think he wanted to put the thing? He's obviously it's an homage to The Thing from Another Planet
Right.
because it's an
Right.
amazing movie. The book, Who Goes There is incredible. That's almost 100 years. That story's almost 100 years old now. Where you have an alien monster, a thing from another planet, thing from another world. Do you think that he went? Do I have the gonads to remake The Thing and do it myself, or was it? What are your thoughts on? Because he does remake it like two movies later. He's putting out The Thing, which is his best movie in my opinion.
So what are you asking
Yeah, let
if
me start again.
he
Center Force. Do you think that because he put The Thing from Another World in the movie as background, where they're watching a scary movie on Halloween, that the idea for him was at some point I will remake The Thing, but for now I'm just going to put it in my
uh,
Halloween type
if he
movie.
it was probably on in his mind. It was probably
Okay.
something that he's always wanted to do because I've read that he read the not only did he sell the movie, he liked the book too as well.
Yeah.
And I think that yeah, I think it was probably on his mind. And I think
Okay.
I think Carpenter has a lot. I feel like he got his heart broken by Hollywood.
Yeah,
And
man.
he would put out these great movies who when
Yeah.
at the time weren't really applauded by critics, not even probably audiences, but I think as time kind of passed, I think people could kind of appreciate the message or even just the film itself. And I think that's why I feel like he's more of he was really progressive in kind of his filmmaking and the ideas that he had in that I think in the 80s people weren't really ready to kind of come to those conclusions. They were caught up. In the 80s the 80s was kind of more of like, "Oh yeah, do that," And I think that he was more into the ideas and themes of kind of cultural kind of stuff and a little deeper than that, you know what I mean?
Oh my God. Yeah, we got that
So,
with Silver Bullet, didn't we?
yeah.
What speed is
I
this
think
film being shot in? Holy shit.
keep it going. Just keep it going. I
They're
think
like,
that
we're
that's
gonna
what
kill these
80s.
kids. Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Well, I think that was kind of the 80s MO.
Right.
That's why we
I would
got
agree with that. Yes.
yeah, kind of a combination of a lot of things was just
My God.
great
Yeah.
idea, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. We're definitely
So,
doing that. Oh
um,
my God.
so
Yeah.
I wanted to kind of ask you, how do you feel watching it when you did the rewatch for this?
Yeah.
How did you feel afterward, and did you feel any kind of being able to understand why this is such a beloved movie because not only of the time, but that it still kind of has that effect on you? Like, do you, yeah, just what did you feel after watching it for the rewatch?
Well, I wanted more, actually. That's
Yeah,
why I started watching Halloween. I wanted to know what happened. I was like,
yeah,
I don't think I know nearly enough about this Michael Myers character. Because again, I was Jason and not Michael or Freddy. I was in the Jason camp. And how dare you say anything bad about my Jason, right? And so I immediately started. I wanted so much more because again, it's an hour and a half long, but it feels like it's only like 45 minutes.
yeah, yeah.
It's
I thought
really
it was
really
really,
quickly paced, even
yeah,
though not there's the tension is being built. I thought the dialogue was really really funny. I thought Annie's character was hilarious. She's my Clay Thompson Award winner. If I go ahead and let
yes. I was
that
gonna
cat
ask
out of the
that.
bag,
Yeah.
she's freaking awesome in this. And she didn't have a whole lot. That actress didn't have a whole lot of. You just mentioned her, PJ, or maybe that's a
Oh,
different
Souls. Yeah,
PJ
PJ
Souls.
Souls.
That's not Annie. Who's Annie? Let me look at my. PJ Souls was Linda. Nancy Keys, she played Annie. Didn't have a whole lot of acting credits, but she steals the show for me, and it sucks that But
Yeah.
Michael makes the homage to his sister using her body. So I think really, he wanted Annie to go first,
Yeah.
and I think she did. But yeah, I get it. I get why there's an everlasting love for the original John Carpenter. I think the remakes have really kind of sullied and tarnished the image of this franchise because people are like, great, another Halloween movie where the guy doesn't never gonna die. And I think
Yeah.
that's really done it a huge disservice, to be honest. Stop doing that, Hollywood. I know you guys are listening. Please stop doing that. I wanted to know more. I know that John Carpenter didn't write number two, but he was an EP, and it's under the John Carpenter umbrella, and it looks like it's shot almost immediately after. It came
Hmm.
out a couple years later, but they pick up right where number one, which is exactly what I wanted. So
Yeah.
what kind of legacy for me? I mean, again, as soon as it was over, I hope number two's available. And I
Yeah.
scrolled to it. There it is. And I watched it back to back.
Yeah. I think for me, what makes this timeless is just the idea of what I was saying, how we opened up this was my original thesis, which was I think that this movie kind of kicked off this idea of this sacred kind of neighborhood suburban safety, and it kind of injects the horror, which isn't now werewolves, or it's not a Frankenstein or vampire, but it's more
Right.
of somebody from that neighborhood, and kind of
Literally.
dismantles any kind of safety net, and I think
Right.
that that's why it's still viable today. It resonates till today because of that. I think it harkens back to a more innocent time,
Yes.
and this movie kind of wants to, like you said, there's hardly any adults in this, and Mike Clay Thompson is the sheriff
Nice.
when Loomis comes and he's kind of giving him a spiel, and he says, "Ah, horseshit, just a lot of nonsense talk or whatever, doctor talk," and it's just like, okay, man. So
Right.
that's my Clay Thompson Award winner for
Nice.
this, but also too, it just again it kicks off this kind of horror sequel, terror and horror that can never be killed, that can live on. And I feel like
Hmm.
that's basically what horror is. It's just this thing, as we said about The Exorcist and of the Devil's Advocate, is just more of you can't stop it. You can only hope to contain it, as to use a sports metaphor.
Yeah,
Yeah.
man. Yeah.
Anyways, yeah. So thanks for everybody for listening, for
Yeah.
watching, and if you want to see more of this, feel free to hit the like and do all that good stuff because it really helps us out. And we're trying to get some traction here. And Tobe, thanks
Yeah.
for joining me. Do you have any final words for the audience?
I do. I just want to say thank you to everybody who's watching. Where the YouTube reels or the YouTube shorts that you are posting on Tuesdays. Thousands of views. I mean, really,
Yeah, we
really
got our
cool
first
stuff.
1,000
So
view
thank you
reel.
to. Holy cow! I think it was at 2,000 when I looked the other day, and you posted it
Oh
on
wow,
and then the
last Tuesday.
cabin in the woods was over 2,000. I think when I looked that. So appreciate it, man. Hopefully you guys are enjoying it. We certainly enjoy sitting here on Saturday mornings and and having fun, and we get to see each other because we don't normally get to see each other as much as we used to back in the old days. So but I will just say, so thank you to everybody for listening. Getting good feedback from friends and family, so thank you to everybody.
Hezekiah.
Hezzy's getting ready for, I believe it's harvest season, so he's kind of dropped off a little bit. He hasn't chimed in, but I will I will say that to happy Halloween to everybody. Everybody stay safe out there. The apples do not have razor blades in them, but still be careful. We heard a lot of nonsense, didn't we? Can we just say just real quickly of the kind of crap that, I mean, there was some people that were doing some bad shit, but how everybody back in the 80s heard that there were razor blades in apples. Every single kid heard that there were razor blades. I don't know how we got the word around. I mean, we didn't have Twitter back then. You couldn't tweet it, and everyone goes, "Okay, careful, everybody. Hey, good safety tip, you guys. Good safety tip." I mean, everybody knew these things, these cultural, yeah, I don't know, pop culture. Yeah. Anyway, but anyway, thank you. Happy Halloween to you, Steve. Hopefully, you have a lot of trick or treaters at your house. We're getting more and more over here. I bought a huge bowl of candy, and I had, I think, 5 or 6 different groups of kids last year. There have been years where nobody comes and knocks on the door, and I have to eat a huge bowl of candy. I'd really rather not do that
Damn.
this year. So come on by, say hi. I'll be passing out candy tonight, and yeah, I hope everyone has a good, happy, safe Halloween. Yeah, thank you.
And with that, we'll see you next week. And hope everybody has a safe Halloween. Thank you.
Bye, guys.